In this lesson, we're going to talk about a chord that has what you might say multiple personalities, or at least multiple names. It goes by many names, which can be a bit perplexing when you're trying to learn chords on the ukulele. And that chord is the diminished chord, the diminished. Sometimes it's notated D-I-M or a little minus sign after the letter, like D minus or D diminished. Now, it comes up a lot in old-timey songs, the height of the Roaring Twenties, all of the early standards. It also comes up a lot in jazz, and every once in a while you'll come across a diminished and go, wait a minute, where is that? Where is that diminished chord? Well, I'm going to try to simplify how you can determine where the diminished chord is on your ukulele rack. And you don't have to have a whole chord book sitting there to learn this. First of all, let's talk a little bit about theory here. Every chord is made up of three notes, essentially three notes. Those are the building blocks of chords. And it's what we call a triad, meaning three. So in the case of the C chord, for instance, the bottom note or the root note is C, and then you go up to the third step, so C, D, E, that would be the middle note of the chord, and then up through two more, E, F, G. So it's C, E, and G. So there's notes in between each one. C, there's a D in there, E, there's an F in there, and then there's a G. So the three building blocks of the C major chord, again, are C, E, and G. Now, you can take those three notes and alter them just slightly and create a whole new chord. For instance, if you take the middle one, the E, and you flat it a half step, we now have a C minor. C major, flat the middle notes, E half step, C minor. If you take the G, the third note of the chord, and sharp it a half step, it becomes C augmented, or AUG, or sometimes you see the little plus sign. So we have C augmented, C minor, C diminished, C minor. Now to diminish the chord, you've got to do two things. You've got to flatten the third, and you've got to flatten the fifth of the note of the chord, C, E, and G. So now instead of having C, E, G, we have C, E flat, and G flat. And that makes a C diminished chord. Now look at this little notation chart right now. All right, now here's how we can know the names of the diminished chords. I'm going to put a chart up right now, and I want you to take a look at it. There are three diminished chords on that chart, the notation, the actual chord grids. And above each of those are a stack of names. And those are all the names of that chord. For instance, the very first one you'll see is simply played like this with the middle finger on the first fret of the first string, the index finger on the first fret of the third string. And that's usually called a C sharp diminished. But it can also be called a G diminished. It can also be called an A sharp diminished. It can be a B flat diminished. It can be a D flat diminished. It can be an E diminished. It can be all of the above. There's only but one fingering for all those chords. Well, not quite. I'll show you in a minute why not. Now, here's the little secret behind all of this. When you play a diminished chord on the ukulele, it's really truly not a diminished chord. Now, the people who write all this music and notate it and put it into chord books and song books and everything, they don't want you to know this, but it's really truly a diminished seventh chord. A diminished seventh. Now, you don't need to know the theory behind the diminished seventh, except that what it does is it allows us to have but only three diminished chords total. And that covers all the diminished chords you'll ever need. Just three fingerings. So bear with me here. Here's the first fingering, as I showed you. Now, the next fingering is like this. You put your index finger on the first fret of the fourth string, your middle finger on the first fret of the second string. Now your ring finger goes over here on the second fret of the third, and your pinky goes on the second fret of the first. Now it's very important, you have all four fingers down, it's very important that you keep your fingers arched. Don't let them lay down like this or they'll touch adjacent strings. You want to have a nice clean sound. So this one is actually a D diminished. And it should sound like that. Try that. Now if you take that, and it's a movable chord, which means if you could take it, just slide it up. Slide up all those fingers, 1 fret. That makes it a D sharp diminished, also known as an E flat diminished. So I'll start all over again. The first one is that C sharp diminished. That's the one fingering you'll need to know. The next one is this one, which I call in the first position or the first fret because the index finger is in the first fret of the 4th string. And then you slide it up. And there are your 3 diminished chords. Now, if you run across a diminished chord in a song, it's either this one, or this one, or this one. Okay? So, I would say 33% of the time you'll be right, no matter which one you choose. And if it doesn't sound right, then try one of the other 2, and that's it. You don't need a chord book to figure it out. It's either this one, or this one, or this one. Now, here's the little thing that's really kind of cool about these diminished chords, is since they are diminished sevenths, and I don't want to get into the whole inversion theory stuff with this right now, but watch this. I'm going to move it up 1 more fret, and it starts all over again. So remember we had a C sharp diminished down here. If I do it up here, see how it sounds the same, but it's in what we call a higher inversion. Now, as I move it up, it just keeps repeating. So we have 3 chords, just 3. 1, 2, 3. Then it repeats. Then it repeats again. And it repeats again. Now, why do you need these up here? Well, you really don't. I mean, if you're just going to be strumming songs and you have a diminished chord, you've got 3 right down here. That's all you need. But there are times if you're doing chord melody work and you're up here playing a melody and it involves a diminished chord, you want to be able to play that. So there's your diminished chord way up on the 7th fret. Okay, now I'm going to put up a little chart right now that'll show you all the diminished chord names, and you can print it out or whatever, and you can refer to it, and that'll be if you need it. But like I say, if you don't have it with you, just remember 1 out of 3 chances you're going to be right with those 3 chords. Now here's the chart. Now, as I said earlier in the lesson, it's really, really important that you keep your fingers arched. And another thing about that is don't let the ukulele slip down like this in your lap, because your wrist will come up this way and then you won't get a good sound. So you want to hold the ukulele up in this fashion, keep the wrist dropped, and keep those fingers arched. Now, in the initial stages, this may feel a little awkward to play this chord, but after you've done some exercises with it, it'll start to become very familiar to you. And like I say, you've got 1 out of 3 chances. It's either this one, or this one, whenever you come across a diminished chord in a song. All right, have fun with it and happy strumming.